So Maddie has a degree in art education and also her BFA drawing and painting from SUNY New Paltz. She took a couple of years off and became a teacher. She got certified to teach K through 12 art in New York State, and then went to graduate school and has recently received her MFA from the University of Albany. And she's here today to tell us about her material sandwiches.
The idea of this talk is talking about my metaphor for using a sandwich and material, but also the idea of why I make things and why, I'm working with abstraction and where do I get these ideas from. I have a personal bias sort of with abstraction and art, and I always, even though I'm in the art world, I always feel a little bit disconnected and wonder why do you make that thing, and is it just about like color and form, or is there a reason why you're kind of using these materials? And I guess I sort of feel like there should be a reason. Rather than working within this little art vacuum, there should be some connections with, things outside the world and bringing those two together. So my idea of the material sandwich, I'm thinking of what's between the bread, meaning like what's the content of why I make art. Okay, so this work is installed in Chatham, right on Main Street, and it's part of a kind of a bigger theme, and another artist, Jamie Harvey, installed in this space too, working with domesticity and labor. So the idea of, working with things that revolve around domesticity or the home, and then also the sense of labor, both physical and, women in the workforce, or women and labor, and how those things kind of relate. But this is actually my newest piece, and my first real sandwich that I kind of was always thinking about my work as material sandwiches, but never really made something that kind of was its own little sandwich unit. And, really about layering of material that I get from my own personal domestic space. So building the metaphorical material sandwich. So like I said before, the bread would be, I'm considering the bread as the exterior. So what you see, the formal idea of making art. Talking about things like form, color, mass, whether it is, sculpture or even a drawing, like what do you formally look at first? And then uncovering sort of this inside and what the meaning and the work is about. And then, that's kind of a little bit more hidden for me, and kind of you have to kind of pull it out and dissect it and kind of pull out the materials to understand what it means. So, like I said before, the layers become both visual and conceptual. So, kind of the big ideas and the big themes throughout my work are abstraction. So there's formal qualities like I said, color and form. And then both the construction and architecture world. And those are also part of personal history. So I have a partner who works construction, so I'm always surrounded by these tools and these materials that I don't really know how they work in the right form, and I don't really know how to make something in the construction world, but I'm also fascinated with just them as a raw material, and that our house, we have these interiors that are made from materials that I don't really know how they work, but I live within a space that, at home, that are comprised of all these materials. And then architecture. But then I started to think about myself, am I the architect or the housewife? There's a reading that I gave. And ultimately, I'll get back to that, but just what is my role as if I'm thinking about architecture? I'm sort of designing these things, but I'm also designing them in an interior space. So I'm kind of the housewife at the same time. And then domesticity, like I've mentioned, and feminism and gender. So what it means to be a woman, and a female artist, and then also in relationship to just feminism in general, talking about feminism as equalism, really. And I guess I didn't understand fully what feminism even was until I went to grad school. I was so naive before. I guess I just thought feminism was, women who burn their bras or either that or some sort of a little bit of an aggressive movement. That's really not what it is at all. Maybe that was part of it, but much more complex. And really, I think of it in terms of equalism. And then materiality. So obviously, formally, materials are, I'm in love with material, just both most of the things that I make, you can kind of see back here, are pretty tactile. So this is made out of arm knitting. So really soft materials. And then I usually compress them next to something hard. So this up here is concrete. And so sandwiching kind of the idea of something made of concrete next to something as sort of historically domestic and gendered as knitting, I don't know, it's kind of interesting to me. And it really does, for me, represent gender within my own house. And then going back to grad school, I to afford it, I had to move back home. So my parents live in suburbia. So it was like taking me away from this nice little New Paltz small town where I had freedom with my boyfriend, and then we were both living with my parents. And so I was also back home, so I started to think about both memory and domestic architecture. And just how things are arranged and set up and on this kind of grid system, and how every house is essentially made the same. But Faith Wilding did this piece in the 70s at Cal Arts as part of the Woman House exhibition. And it was pretty much like a new concept for that time to have a entire show made of things of the domestic world. And so this is just one little part. The whole house was transformed into different performances, different locations for installations, and so the public would walk up and into this house, kind of like, I don't know if they had to knock on the door, what the protocol there was, but I always pictured like the public going and knocking on the door and entering this house, and they, it was painted pink. There was like these breasts all over, like these little fried eggs all over. But this was a performance that took place there, and for me, it was the first time that it was really powerful when I first saw it, and it really made me think about being a woman and kind of stereotypical passive woman, just the idea of that.
Waiting for someone to come in, waiting for someone to hold me, waiting for someone to feed me, waiting for someone to change my diaper, waiting to crawl, to walk, waiting to talk, waiting to wear my frilly dress, waiting to be a pretty girl, waiting to sit on Daddy's lap, waiting, waiting, waiting for my breasts to develop, waiting to wear a bra, waiting to menstruate, waiting to read forbidden books, waiting to go to a party, to be asked to dance close, waiting to be beautiful, waiting for the secret, waiting for life to begin, waiting to get dressed up, to shave my legs, waiting to be pretty, waiting for him to notice me, waiting for him to ask me to go steady, waiting to neck, to make out, waiting to go all the way, waiting to smoke, to drink, to stay out late, waiting to be a woman, waiting for my great love, waiting for my wedding day, waiting for my wedding night, waiting for sex, waiting for him to make the first move, waiting for him to give me pleasure, waiting for him to excite me, waiting for him to give me an orgasm, waiting for him to come home, to fill my time, waiting for my baby to come, waiting for my belly to swell, waiting for my breasts to fill with milk, waiting for the first contractions, waiting for the contractions to end, waiting for the head to emerge, waiting for the first scream, the afterbirth, waiting to hold my baby, waiting for my baby to suck my milk, waiting for my baby to stop crying, waiting for some time to myself, waiting to be beautiful again, waiting for my child to go to school, waiting for life to begin, waiting for him to tell me something interesting, to ask me how I feel, waiting for him to stop being crabby, reach for my hand, kiss me good morning, waiting for fulfillment, waiting for the children to marry, waiting for something to happen, waiting to grow wise, waiting for my body to break down, to get ugly, waiting for my flesh to sag, waiting for my breasts to shrivel up, waiting for a visit from my children, for letters, waiting for my husband to die, waiting to get sick, waiting for winter to end, waiting for a good bowel movement, waiting for the pain to go away, waiting for the struggle to end, waiting for release, waiting.
So that got me thinking about, I guess, just re-examining myself in my role as an artist, and at that time I was kind of making work that didn't really feel was about kind of, I guess, domestic ideas, but not really about any commentary on it, or I wasn't using material that directly related to things I was thinking about, and so there was that disconnect when people were looking at my work. Okay, well, I can't really pull anything from this material because it's not directly related, and I think a lot of people need that connection. So I started rethinking that. And so to jump ahead, this is a piece from my thesis exhibition, which was in May, and it's titled BRCLGFLR, which are abbreviations in the construction world for like architectural plans. Bedroom, ceiling, floor. And so the idea is that I'm kind of removing this negative space and collapsing material and sandwiching them into this kind of structure or unit. And also the idea for me, what got me excited about this piece, was just I always choose things that I'm really drawn to first, and then I think about how I can use them. So I've always been in love with carpet padding, and so that's what this is. And the fact that it kind of comes in like a purpley pinkish hue and then a blue hue. And I hate the idea of women being related to the color pink and men being associated with blue, and how my friends were having these things like gender reveal parties. So before they were even, the child was even born, they were being diagnosed as a certain gender, and kind of very prescriptive thing as they're entering the world. You already have that identity. And I just felt really weird about that, and I wasn't excited to go to these things. And but so that's for me, that I was just thinking about color in that way and material choice in that way. So this up here is molding. Here's the detail. And then I would cut all of these little strips from carpet padding. And this thing is pretty giant. It's like 7 foot in this dimension by like 4.5 feet by 4 feet. So the idea also of labor and how I'm investing all of this time into doing this one action. I was kind of calling it domestic action for a little bit in my work, which I'm not so sure about that term anymore, but definitely labor and repetition has been an important thing. And so this piece is also part of the thesis, and it's a living room, kitchen, a lavatory, outdoor living space. So this one's a little bit more complicated. I did this one after I did the bedroom. They're getting a little weirder, I think. And so like right here there's construction materials like insulation, the pink foam that you would find in walls. And then over here we have the bathroom space, the lavatory. So also playing with color formally too. I was making choices based off colors that were in my own space. So this yellow, my childhood bedroom was painted like this kind of weird yellow. I picked it out. And then things like this blue reminded me of painter's tape that I always have around. So I kind of pick things that are around and use them. And then popcorn ceiling paint. I'm always using that. And I love that people go into Home Depot and Lowe's and have this like hole in the wall and they try and repair it themselves and they don't know how, so they just cover it with, popcorn ceiling paint or something. And then this is a close-up of the bathroom space, the lavatory. So I cast shower drains. Oh. Actually my own shower drain with hair in it and stuff. And then I took towels and I would roll them up and sandwich them. And then this is a light fixture. And then bath mat. So the whole thing is kind of like squished. And then I was thinking of the glass as a shower door. So there's some things that that are removed a little bit in material. And I've been recently thinking about that. Like the idea of plaster, I guess can still really, some houses the walls are still plaster. But I am thinking about that. Like, can I use something that's a little bit more, like, I like the idea of concrete a little bit more for me. I don't really have plaster in my own living space. And then this piece, a basement studio garage space. And I was really thinking about with this piece, kind of, things like, so I would cut up like pieces of pegboard and then use this. This is actually all duct tape right here, and popcorn ceiling paint, and just different things that were collected from these spaces. And then the interior of these were kind of, I was thinking about them as shelves, and they're made out of furnace filters, air filters. And then I was really referencing, so I had this chance to install my work in this great museum, so I was really trying to reference the architecture in the museum, but also call attention to it. So I was, in a way, kind of separating myself on my own axes. Everything's kind of tilted. You'll be able to see that. I have like an aerial view. But referencing, this is made, like in the site, I constructed it so that it was made to really reference the stairs, sort of underneath the stairs. And it also became important that I installed it underneath the stairs because I wanted the lighting and like the basement space to be a little bit darker. And kind of the idea of when you're going through a garage, you're going, through one, you're kind of going into one space and through another space. You're going from interior to exterior. So as you walk through, here you would be entering someone else's work that was in the show. It's kind of like the exit point. You can kind of see everything was installed at this angle against sort of the straight angles of the columns, as a way of sort of subverting everything, and the idea of subverting my idea or complicating the traditional ideas of domestic spaces and putting them on their own voice or their own axis. And so this piece, I became actually really excited about because I always had these little things that I would make. Like here's the mold from the shower drain that I cast right here. And so in being able to include some of like my things in my process, or just small things that really weren't working in a large sculpture. So this is a way for me to kind of display and arrange them. And this was also my childhood table, kitchen table. that also functioned as like our craft table. So it was like disgusting, and I really can't believe that we ate on it. I think we had to put on like a tablecloth every time because there was just, I had to paint it to even show it because people were like appalled. And this is a detail of bricks that I cast in resin that was on that piece. And so the bottom layer is moss, and then the top, this middle layer is feathers from a pillow that I had that I slept on forever that kind of just exploded. So I was like, oh, I should do something with these feathers. So this piece was the newest piece because I had to make the entire thing in this space. They actually let me, it's called Underpinning Interior Drawing. And they let me cut away at the carpet squares in the museum, which was for me the first time where I felt like I was really interacting with the space and becoming a little bit more of maybe the architect or the constructor rather than just kind of taking from these domestic spaces and then just, dropping them off in a new space. Right. I had a little bit more of an action, and I really liked that. It also set up this axis. It set up these lines that everything else was installed with. So there's ceiling tiles here, and then there's some linoleum flooring over here, and then this green is the glue from underneath the carpet padding. It's just this awesome color. It kind of reminded me of like this weird outdoor space or this weird patio. And so after graduation, I was accepted into the Kingston Sculpture Biennial. And so I was thinking about, again, my kind of role as this architect or this housewife, and in the reading it kind of talked about how men were considered, she was referencing as the architects, and how they would work together and build these things together, and they were, the difference was women were inside painting and men were kind of outside working. And I was like, I really want to try making something outside about these interior spaces. So I made this piece, and I'm calling it the exterior representation of my thesis work. So new materials, but still the same idea of sandwiching spaces, but with a little bit more exterior material, like these cinder blocks I hadn't used before, and this faux grass was kind of a new thing. So all of this work was also installed in an area that's in Midtown Kingston, which is very much in transition. I mean, it's there's some art galleries there, but other than that, there's a lot of Latinos walking around, and it was kind of really great for me to install there and have people come up being like, well, what are you doing? Like, people who really haven't seen contemporary art at all. So that was interesting because I really felt like I had to explain my work in a way that I didn't even realize it was about when I was explaining it to them. Yeah. And they totally were great and intrigued and had better questions than most people about my work. And so an artist that I'm looking at when I'm working a lot is Jessica Stockholder. And so I always kind of still solve a sculpture in terms of color and form and texture rather than solving it in a sculptural way, which is like the kind of the bones. I think about the bones last. I kind of think about the surface of something first. And I think she does too. You can kind of see that she talks about, she never took a sculpture class. She solves things very much in a painterly way and uses color in a way that I think a lot of sculpture does not utilize. And so this is another piece. So she's using things like, carpeting and the wall and lamps, and how, she might be taking them apart and you may have to kind of find those things, but they're definitely there.
And does she specifically talk about her stuff as being domestic related or referenced?
No. She talks about her work purely in a formal way. Can I talk about these things and still be respected in the art world?
In the context, as a woman, as a woman artist, as a feminist, and still, or is there this subtle or not so subtle pushback?
Right. Yeah. And
in this world of art specifically.
yeah, my work, because it's a little bit more formal, has that disconnect. And I think when people learn about what I'm interested in and why they become, there's sometimes a little bit of like disappointment.
Oh, it's doing the exact opposite for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Good.
absolutely.
Before I was making that thesis work, I was constructing walls and inserting things from my house. Like I found these bricks in my backyard, and this was part of a fence we were taking down. So inserting really material into and using the structure of a wall to carry the material. And ultimately, I was just kind of fascinated with like the construct of a wall, and I really wanted to make this really permanent thing seem fragile and be able to cut, like there's a hole through here. So being, I guess also the idea of a wall being so fragile. I mean, you can just kind of like put your hand through it and it's gone. So we live in these places that seem really sturdy and tough, but they're really not. And somebody could just kick through your wall and break in your house or kick through your door, that kind of idea. And then this, I started using a wall and exterior of a wall to stand in for gender. So I was thinking of the exterior here and the wall being sort of masculine, and interior inserting it with sort of feminine materials. And I was reading this book called Sexuality in Space, and it kind of described interiors being feminine and exteriors being masculine, and I was kind of playing with that idea. I don't think it was as successful, but I did kind of enjoy the process of it and building and kind of that idea of me building something and inserting these weird things in that space.
And what is the exterior made out of on that one?
Oh, this is just batting cut into...
That's the interior.
That's the interior.
And the exterior is,
it's just a wall, sheetrock.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So I would kind of build a wall, and it would extend as an appendage from the gallery wall. So also subverting our idea of for me, this really terrible white cube, and I felt really intimidated by that space. And so building these little areas within the space that I kind of felt a little bit more comfortable with. And so I did this piece with Jamie Harvey, another grad student at UAlbany, called Surrogate Place. And the idea was make it your own. So we had this wall back here, and we called it the accessory wall. So we built these, we acquired these shelves, and we would take all of these things from our living spaces and insert them onto the accessory wall. And then we set up all of these spaces, different spaces in the home. So we built a kitchen in the space. We went to Habitat for Humanity and got like a whole kitchen set. And then we built a garage, and we built a living room. And so we'd invite people to go into this space, and we'd give them a little card. And the card would say, like, set the table. And so we'd close the door, and they'd go in with their friends or somebody they were comfortable with, and they would set the table and they had a choice of these accessories or these objects from the wall. And it was kind of, for me, it was a little bit more research. It wasn't really for me like an art piece. It was more of like a research and an event for me to kind of step back and say, okay, like, what does this mean? And ultimately I became interested with rearranging things and how women, especially when they were in these spaces, really had a ball and would take apart things and rearrange, and how when couples entered the space, the best one was prepared for company. There was another couple that went in that I knew were having trouble at home, and they were really interesting because they went in, they were kind of like disagreeing, and they didn't talk to each other when they were arranging these spaces. So part of it was interesting to see kind of that friction that people have when they live with other people. And then the other part was just interesting to see how these objects are being used, what people would choose, and then, how they would act based on kind of the situation we put them in. So Amanda Mathis is somebody who, she's a young artist in Brooklyn right now, and she just got an IFA grant. And she has kind of two different bodies of work, but this body of work, she goes into, I guess there's only that. She goes into homes, and she cuts away and reveals the underlayer. So it's, for me, it's a very direct action of what I'm thinking about. I think she does a good job of just cutting out the bullshit and saying, hey, this is exactly what I'm doing. I'm not interested in much of being that direct. I kind of want to make it more complicated, because I don't think it's as simple for what I'm thinking about as this. But there's definitely a connection with her. And then she does this other work where she builds these walls, and I've built all those walls with these voids in them. When I was installing that basement piece, I kept thinking about this piece and how I could kind of insert the architecture of the space too. So I'm really interested in Judith Butler's theory on gender, and then how I sort of started to think about her theory on gender in relationship to my role in the domestic world. So I kind of, throughout my thesis when I was writing it, I was talking about me acting or performing in my domestic space without even realizing it. Why do I do certain things that I do? It's not because I just naturally do them. It's very much a taught performance. Even if I'm by myself, I'm still performing. And so I got the kind of idea through her theory about gender. So that is what is between the bread. That is all the things I think about and all the information. Really why I do what I do. I consider it a job, not just, a hobby. It's something that is work, definitely. That's it.